Hello, my name is David, and I just wanted to make this video um, just to potentially help somebody who might be dealing with some anxiety, as I have, and just talk about my experience with it and things I've learned about it and how to overcome it. Oh, my thing's not in it. And I tend to be pretty rambly. I tend to just kind of go all over the place, so apologies for any non sequiturs and asides and things like that. But I just was thinking a lot about anxiety and how I've dealt with it and stuff. So I guess I'll go into a little bit of my history. I, growing up, I was always I started becoming an anxious person around high school, my teenage years. I'm in my early 30s right now, and I remember it happening because my core friend group had been separated. We all ended up going to different schools. And I hadn't realized that I had certain abandonment issues until much older. But my response to that was this feeling of like, well, I don't need anybody then. It's fine. Like I had a sort of like, I don't need anybody, you know, I don't, I'm fine on my own, emotions or weakness, that kind of mentality, as a coping mechanism to being hurt. Um, my parents had divorced when I was an infant, so that also contributed to this feeling of like, separation and feeling like, how do you cope with that? So thinking that way led me to feeling very anxious, socially anxious, and just anxious about myself and my future. And, I had a core friend group who I felt I could be myself around. And then when I was put into an environment where, these friend groups in this new school, they're already established, these people have already known each other most of their lives. How do I fit in? The stuff I said with these group of friends didn't work with this group of friends. And that led to me being very self conscious. And a lot of times I would just waste the day away like playing video games. And not to say that playing video games in itself is a waste, but I was doing it as a way of sort of numbing myself of like, okay, I can just play a game and just not think and just not care and just, not have to address what I'm feeling. And I went that way, thinking that way for quite a while, probably until like my mid to late 20s. Um, all that time of just feeling like I don't really need anybody. I don't want to get too emotionally attached with someone. I don't want to express any sense of vulnerability that I have. But what was happening, which I think inevitably happens for all of us, is it started to slowly bubble out. And it would bubble out in a lot of what I at the time would think inopportune, but would bubble out in, it would be triggered in certain ways. Um, I would lash out at somebody who didn't really deserve it because, I don't know, they didn't text me back quick enough, or I would see, let's say relationships, for example. I would see a woman who I was attracted to, like with another guy or something, and I would just be irrationally angry about it, even though I had never told the woman how I felt about them. Like really irrational, you know, schoolyard childish stuff. Um, and eventually, what had happened was I ended up going to massage school. I'm a massage therapist by trade. And I had a friend, a good friend, who was also a massage therapist. And while I was in school, that friend passed away. Pretty, like, untimely, pretty tragically passed away. And I remember that rocked me to my core because earlier that year I had an aunt pass away. And all the years prior, I'd had family members pass away, grandparents, aunts, uncles. And in those circumstances, for lack of a better way of explaining it, they had been timely. It'd been like, this person is older, they've lived most of their lives, they're passing away in their 70s, 80s. I had one friend who had taken his own life when I was, maybe 17 or so. That was my first experience with like close loss. But so I this friend passing away who was the same age as I was in my like mid 20s, that really rocked me. And that forced me to have to confront how vulnerable I really was and how much I really needed, how much I really cared about people. Because my whole life, well, not my whole life, but from, probably around a decade of just saying, I don't care, it doesn't matter, I don't need these people, you know, kind of, in a way, it's similar to like, um, there's a test with children where it's object permanence. You know, if they're not literally right in front of me and they're somewhere else, then I just don't care about them. They don't exist to me anymore. Like I just hadn't developed emotional object permanence, I guess, if that's a term of just like, anyway, you get it. So that really rocked me, and it made me realize that I need to uh, address how I feel about people while they're still here, because we're not. No one's going to be here forever. We're all going to pass away. We're all going to die. Our loved ones are going to die, and so rather than be anxious about that, and rather than um, brood over the fact that people are going to leave, I said I'm just going to appreciate the time that I have with them while they're still here, um, because that's when that time matters the most. So I remember sitting down with my father and having a deep conversation with him about how I felt and my upraising and all that stuff, my upbringing and all that, and that can be another video. Um, but as I started to address how I felt about other people and how I really started to tap into my own feelings, I noticed my anxiety was starting to shift. It didn't disappear, but I was noticing it was starting to shift. I was becoming more aware of how anxious I really was. Um, and the interesting thing about that is when I was a teenager, young 20s, I was very depressed. And there's a saying that, if you're depressed, if you're stuck in the past, you're depressed. If you're too caught up in the future, you're anxious. But if you're at peace, you're in this moment right now. So growing up, I had always been depressed and then also anxious. These unaddressed feelings from my past and then the uncertainty of my future just kept battling themselves out, and it was just a constant typhoon inside me. And so my first step was, okay, people die. People I love are going to die. While they're still here, I need to address how I feel about these people. And that's addressing a lot of things in the past. And for me, that meant addressing issues I had with my parents and, things from my past, friends from the past, relationships I had from the past. And that was my first step towards, you know, becoming what I think I am now, a much more well-rounded person, is addressing the painful things from the past. And just acknowledging them is a step. But I think sometimes we think acknowledging is it. That's the only step there is. Yeah, I did some messed up stuff in the past. That's it. But you're not really addressing it. You're sort of saying it happened, but how did it make you feel? What did you feel back then? How do you feel now? Um, Try to think empathetically or put yourself in the perspective of those other people. How were they feeling at that time? How did your reactions possibly affect them? Oh, the screen goes dark whenever I let it linger. How did your reactions affect them? Things like that. Um, so anyway, I had addressed those issues, and I just kind of noticed I'm not really caught up in the past anymore. You know, you ever get those random? I'm the type of person who would get. I'd be laying in bed, and I would get those random memories of something I did in elementary school, and I would feel irrationally like embarrassed about it. It's like, oh, I did that thing. Oh, that's so cringy. Why? Oh, and it's like, why? Nobody remembers. Nobody cares. Nobody cares but you. And there's no reason to care about it because that happened. And all that happened to bring you to this point and to carry you on to the next point. So, anyway, um, once that happened, I graduated school, became a licensed therapist, massage therapist, and masseur, whatever. And I ended up going overseas. I took a trip to the UK, and that blew my mind. That the idea of getting on a plane, seeing nothing but ocean for like 8 hours, and then just suddenly being in a completely different part of the world, just just blew my mind. And from then on, I realized how much I love to travel. And if you have the means, now, yeah, if you have the means, I highly encourage traveling. Traveling is so, to me, it's like, it's everything. Um, that being said, it's not like I'm loaded or anything and I could just go. Traveling costs a lot of money. This is money I had saved up for over a decade to like spend to do this. Um, but anyway, uh, and when I was there, I kind of realized like the depression aspect had been pretty much solved for the most part. I wasn't depressed anymore. And from there, it was more anxious. It was anxiety. It was worrying about my future. It was, okay, now what's next? What do I do now? So from that point, I started working in massage therapy, and I ended up taking a quick trip to Poland to visit a very good friend, and um, that was another step towards like getting through certain elements of anxiety. Because for one thing, I was traveling by myself. I was going all these places by myself, and I remember being, you know, a teenager and feeling like I really want to go somewhere. Matter of fact, this is an aside because, like I said, I ramble and I have tons of non sequiturs. I remember when I was, let's see, I went to the UK when I was about 27, 28. So I remember driving there near my old high school. There's a sports field, and I remember driving up there because I was going to go exercise, run laps, and whatnot. And I remember driving past my old high school, and I parked in the sports field in the parking lot, and I just started crying so hard. I just bawled my eyes out because it just struck me like I haven't done anything that I've really wanted to. I haven't been anywhere. I've been so afraid of following a certain path, the certain orthodox path, that I hadn't done anything I really wanted to do. Um, so to give some context to that, I basically stood on the conveyor belt and was went to college somehow. I don't even know how I got in there. I auditioned for the theater and just happened to get in because my grades definitely weren't going to get me there. And I was trying to. I was following the path of like you go to college, you get a job, you get promoted, you get married, you have kids, the whole like typical path of kids go out, suburban house, white picket fence, retire, die. Um, And I remember being in college, and I remember walking. I'd been there for a number of years because I was just lollygagging. And I remember my last semester, or maybe the semester before my last, um, I asked people on campus. I remember just walking around campus, and I was asking everyone, like, hey, if you could do anything, even if you never got paid and you never were successful, you never made any money and you weren't successful, what would you want to do regardless? No matter, even if it doesn't work, you would do it anyways. And they would tell me. And then I'd ask them, okay, now what are you majoring in? And I swear, 80% of everyone I asked that question, their major had nothing to do with what they wanted to do. Nothing to do with what they were passionate about. Nothing to do with what they truly wanted. And for me, that kind of really drove the point home. So then COVID happens, and I get laid off from my job. The timeline of this is really skewed. This is before I became a massage therapist. I'm sorry, it's very non sequitur. But I got laid off, and then I just stopped going to school. I said, I don't know why I'm here. I could get a degree, but like those aren't really worth much now. I know so many kids who have degrees can't get jobs, get the same type of jobs that like someone without a degree would get. It just didn't make sense. I was like, why am I here? I don't even like being in school. I like learning, but I don't like being in school. So it kind of clicked to me like, what, I'm wasting my time. And all that time beforehand, I'd worked, you know, certain jobs and certain like white collar jobs and cubicles and offices and stuff, chasing this idea of this is what I'm supposed to do, right? I'm supposed to do this kind of stuff, right? And then it clicked to me like, I don't have to do this. You can do whatever you want. You only have so much life. So why spend it wasting your time doing stuff that truly agonizes you? Now I understand you gotta do what you gotta do to live. I'm not saying like, oh, just bail out on everything. You gotta do what you gotta do to live. But also understanding what is your passion? What are you truly passionate about? What will truly fulfill you? Because everything that you're doing, the menial stuff you're doing, the menial job, the BS you really don't like dealing with, use that as stepping stones to get where you want to go. And if you don't know where you want to go, if you're thinking the future is really shady or it's clouded, you're way too far ahead. Your thinking's way too far up here. You need to come back. You need to pull back to your past and address stuff in your past. This is a really stupid analogy, but this is what I like to use. This is a really dumb analogy, but maybe it'll be helpful. Life is like a slingshot. All right, you have a slingshot or a bow and arrow, whatever, anything that you pull back. And sometimes you leave it there and you feel stagnant, right? And you don't know what to do. Sometimes you got to pull back as far back as you can. You got to go back into your past. And because pulling a bow is really hard, like it's tense and it hurts and your muscles are straining. You're just like, it's painful. And then you let go. And then the arrow just flies out there. And you propel yourself so much further than you thought you could. That's kind of how I looked at it. So basically, after you know all that, where was I? I told you I ramble a lot. So anyway, with anxiety, because that's the whole theme of all this. In a roundabout way, I promise it all comes back to anxiety. Is I had started, because I had recognized that I had certain anxieties and that some of them were fueled by my past, the depression I was holding in my past. I started recognizing, okay, I need to start understanding my future a little bit. So I had saved up, I'd worked hard, saved up quite a bit of money. And I'm gonna be frank, as a massage therapist, you don't make a lot of money. You really don't. So I had really like busted my butt to make as much money as I could. And early this year, I took a trip to Japan. Some context to that. I had always wanted to go to Japan. I'm not an otaku. I don't watch anime. I read manga. Like, I've got some anime I watch, I've got certain things I like, but I'm not like, and I wasn't driven by anime. If you like anime, great, awesome. If you love manga, great, awesome. I like certain manga, don't watch a lot of anime. But anyway, I just, even before I knew what Japan was, before I had a concept of what it was, I had always wanted to go there. It was like some people go to like different religious sites as a pilgrimage. To me, my pilgrimage was going to Japan. And the thing that propelled that was what I'm about to mention was I felt an intuitive drive to do it. And that, I think, is more the theme of this video, is differentiating an anxiety-based decision and an intuitive decision, or an anxious decision and an intuitive decision. For most of my 20s, my decisions were informed by anxiety. Unconsciously, but they were. And the difference came about, but me understanding the difference came about when I really sat down and addressed things from my past. My relationship with my parents, old relationships. When I really started to address my past, the anxiety of the future became a little clearer and I could dissect it. And I had come to realize that the thing that held me back in my 20s was so much anxiety. And that includes everything. Like, I went to college when I didn't really want to. I had no aspiration to go to college. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it just didn't feel like it was for me. It was because I was anxious. I felt like I was supposed to. I have to. That's what you're supposed to do, right? You can't make it in this world without going to college. I have to, right? That was all anxiety. Working certain jobs, you do what you got to do to survive, obviously. But feeling like I have to get to this point of the career ladder to be somebody, to be relevant, that was anxiety. My relationships were oftentimes fueled by anxiety, a fear of abandonment, or a fear that, like, this person won't wait around, or this person, this is another can of worms. But basically, a lot of things were driven by anxiety. And only after I had addressed things did I start to understand where intuition comes into play. My decision to go there, it was kind of informed by a lot of things in my environment. And so I personally try to practice Taoism, or what I understand as Taoism, being aware and attuned to things in your environment to help inform your decision making in a very effortless way, rather than forcing something to happen, because a lot of times your anxiety is making you feel like it needs to happen. You let things play out the way they need to play out. And more times than not, in my life, pretty much every time, it works out because you let it work itself out without enforcing your ego or enforcing your will or enforcing your anxieties onto it. So that trip had come about because I have a friend who lives in Japan, and they had come to visit, and they'd visited a couple times in the States, and they had mentioned it, and I was trying to learn some Japanese here and there, and it just kind of I felt this clarity, this certainty. And it wasn't because, people might say, oh, it's wishful thinking. It was a certainty that this is going to happen. It's not going to happen right now. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but this will happen. You just got to be patient, keep doing what you do, and it will work out. And it's an innate certainty. And that certainty brings a sense of peace. It doesn't bring a sense of impatience. Sometimes you want something to happen and you get impatient because you want it so bad. Even though you kind of already know it's probably going to happen, you still want it right now. That, to me, would mean you need to evaluate what makes you want this thing in the first place. Why are you so anxious about it? Because impatience is a symptom or a form of anxiety. So, anyway, I went on the trip earlier this year, and I think that trip, plus a few things later, really solidified my understanding of where my anxiety comes from and how I should address it, and really reconnected me with Tao or with God or the universe or whatever name you want to call it. Because really, I remember, and I'll probably make another video about the whole trip, but I remember just being there, and there were times where I was so anxious about things, about missing flights, missing trains, especially missing trains, talking to people, being self-conscious because of my skin color, my ethnicity, all of that stuff. And getting there, I had realized everything just sort of worked out. Everything that I had planned beforehand fell through, didn't work. Everything that I had done in the moment, everything that I just said, I'm just going to do it because it's here right now. Let's do it right now. Worked perfectly. It couldn't have been better. Well, some things could have been better, but it worked out well. And it really made me just kind of recognize things do tend to just work themselves out when you don't let your anxiety dictate how you react or how you try to be proactive about things, at least in my experience. And so I'm still kind of learning to differentiate the thing with anxiety and intuition. So if you made it this far in the video, Too long didn't read, too long didn't watch. If you're feeling a lot of anxiety, chances are, at least in my experience, your thought process is very, very far. You have a lot of uncertainty about your future. And a lot of times that is being informed by your past. The sooner you can address, not just acknowledge, but address, correct, rectify, find closure, or at the very least, create an outlet of things from your past, the sooner you can recognize what is stemming your anxiety, and then the sooner you can recognize when you make decisions, is it based in anxiety or is it based in your intuition? Does it feel like you're making this decision because you're worried about a certain outcome? Or are you making this decision because it feels like the right thing to do in this moment? Are you worried about bridges, 10 bridges ahead? Or are you worried about this bridge you're crossing right now? You're on right now. And then from there, you start to make certain decisions, at least in my experience, you make more decisions that involve this bridge right now. Now, the big thing about that is that doesn't mean being impulsive. That doesn't mean being emotionally impulsive, or like I feel a certain way, therefore I have to act on that emotion, because that's also being informed in a way by anxiety and by emotional distress. It's more of a, with intuitive actions and intuitive decision making, it's more of a clarity. It's easy to make this decision, and it's not being provoked out of you. It's just sort of like, I'm trying to think of an example. It's like, maybe I don't know, you're at a movie theater, and you know, you're with some friends and you can't decide what movie to watch. And then something just kind of makes you say, oh, let's watch this one. You don't even see the poster. You don't even like, it's just something clicks in your brain. I should see that one, or something like that. There's a myriad of examples and things that can happen. But the big thing is just recognizing the difference. And I'll probably make more videos addressing that because it's a pretty deep topic. But anyway, that's 30 minutes of me just rambling, non sequiturs and asides. If this was helpful, you found this interesting, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And yeah, take care.